Welcome to the Air Hug Community Podcast. You are listening to episode number 120. Hello and welcome to the Air Hug Community. If you're new here, this is a podcast. It's very informal, very conversational. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't, but we love to talk about real midlife, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, and all the emotions that go along with it. So I'm really glad you're here. Welcome. Let's get after it. Well, hello there. This is actually take two because I was literally so tongue-tied in the first 2 minutes of talking about this topic that I just decided to scrap and start over. So here we go. When you think of seasonal traditions, do you think mostly of celebrations like pumpkin spice and hay rides and haunted houses and giving thanks and eating so much that you're too full that you want to fall asleep and watch football and football parties and things like that? And then going into even the high holidays. I don't know if you want to call them the high holidays, but the holidays that are typical going into fall and winter. A lot of people think of these things as seasonal happenings, but there's another seasonal happening that occurs and it's not quite so pleasant, and that's called Seasonal Affective Disorder. Okay, so what is it? It is actually a type of depression, and it can happen during certain seasons. Typically, it can happen in fall and winter, but it does also occur in some people in spring and summer. So if it happens in the fall and winter, it's called winter depression. If it happens in spring and summer, it's called summer depression. Okay, the sources that I used for today's discussion are Johns Hopkins Health and the Mayo Clinic Health. And I just want to let you know that, so I didn't just go to some unverified place, but I do trust those two sites. So those are what I go to. And I like it because it's laid out in layman's terms, because that's what we are really at this point. So who is at risk for seasonal affective disorder? And the reason I'm talking about this on this podcast about midlife is because this is primarily an adult problem that worsens with age. So I don't know if it worsens, let me rephrase that. Your risk of coming down with seasonal disorder increases with age. And so I thought this was a really good topic to talk about to our midlife audience, aka you guys. Okay, so also females are more likely to suffer from this than males. Wow, we've had a couple of episodes lately where females seem to get more affected by things. Remember, we just talked about that with the female brain and hormones and Alzheimer's. I think that was episode 116. But rarely do you see seasonal affective disorder in anyone in their 20s or under the age of 20. So what is the cause? Well, here's the belief, and the best word that I could use is the current belief, okay? I want to put that out there. But the current belief is that less sunlight available during the day and shorter days total contribute to a possible chemical change in the brain. So one thing we do know is that melatonin is a sleep-related hormone, and it's been linked to seasonal affective disorder. And that's because we make more melatonin when there is less light. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to get this, obviously, but some people will and some people won't. So what are the symptoms? Well, most commonly, we're going to stick to the winter version today because that's what I could find the most information on, is that there is a fall onset, and the symptoms include wanting to sleep and sleeping more, daytime drowsiness, loss of interest in activities that you formerly enjoyed, social withdrawal, irritability, anxiety, guilt, hopelessness, fatigue, a decrease in energy, decrease in sex drive, decrease in focus, trouble thinking clearly, increased appetite, especially for sweets and carbs, and resultant weight gain, physical problems, headaches, And the thing is, these symptoms are present most of the time. So it's not like you have, it's when you actually have seasonal affective disorder, these are present at the onset of the season where it starts, and they stay, and they're present throughout most of the day. So it's not like you just have a bad day and something like that. This is different. All right. So I don't want anyone to like overdiagnose themselves. So did you catch the acronym too? Seasonal Affective Disorder, SAD? I thought that was kind of strange, or an odd coincidence, if you will. The other thing is this diagnosis may occur in conjunction with other diagnoses such as heart disease, cancer, mood disorders, and substance abuse or anxiety. So how is the diagnosis made? Well, a true diagnosis is made by a medical mental health professional, preferably a psychiatrist, who does a full workup and medical history. So that's how you get a true diagnosis. Like, this is not something that we can self-diagnose. We may have a hint at it, and if that's the case, then what needs to be done is we need to reach out and contact a mental health professional and get a consult. Okay, so the treatment, and again, I'm going to stick to the winter treatment at this point for winter seasonal affective disorder or winter depression. The treatment may include several things, such as increased exposure to sunlight, maybe being outside or near a window as much as possible. Light therapy with special light daily is also a mode of treatment. And I don't know what kind of light that was. It was not mentioned. Psychotherapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy or interpersonal therapy. These things can actually help with distorted viewpoints about self and the environment that we're in. Another approach that can help is improve interpersonal relationship skills, and also identifying our stress triggers and how to manage them. And finally, another treatment, again, under the care of a medical professional, can be antidepressants. But there's things that we can do as well. So here's what we can do if we maybe have this diagnosis or are thinking that we might be in this state. So number one is get evaluated and get help. Number two is be realistic about our expectations. All right. So this is not something that, okay, you go on antidepressants for like 2 days, you go to one therapy session and you're cured, right? It's not a snap out of it thing. It's a day-by-day gradual improvement. Okay, so let's get back to other things. Be with others that you're confident and have trust in. Do things that help you feel better, activities, actually take action. Do something nice for someone else, so get out of your own head a little bit. Exercise regularly. Delay big decisions during this time because it might not just be the best time. You just might be not able to make a clear decision, even if you are well informed. Definitely eat healthier, all right, and avoid alcohol and recreational drugs. These are all things that can actually help that you can do on your own, all right? So again, I want to make sure to reiterate this point that snapping out of it is not a thing. You don't just snap out of true depression. So it's very important to get, the care under a true professional mental health person, and to be patient and focus on what went right. This is one of the other things that you can do. Focus on what went right. And I referred to this in episode number 117 as a gratitude prompt. And this is something that can help. Instead of just saying, I'm thankful for the coffee, I'm thankful for the sunshine, although we probably really are thankful for those things, writing out what went right can actually prompt your brain to think of what went right and then be grateful for it. And that can actually help to change your outlook a little bit too. Also, let your family and friends help. They want to help. The people who love you genuinely want to see you do better. So let them help, and just be honest with them, tell them like whatever maybe they suggest, maybe it'll be helpful, maybe it won't. So just be honest with them because these are the people who are special in your life and you can be honest with them. Now I have a really special guest who is literally an open book on talking about her depression and her seasonal affective disorder. So hold tight and we're going to bring her on in just a second. Hello, everybody. And for this part of the podcast, I have brought in a friend of mine whom we have met online many years ago. She is a strength and conditioning coach online at this point and a business mentor. And her name is Christina Montalvo. So Christina, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Judy. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on. And when I polled you about this question, what you said to me is, I'm an open book in talking about this. So I would love to talk about your experience, I think I'm going to say, with, and I don't know if you call it seasonal affective disorder or having depression or both, or how did that start and what do you call it for you?
That's a really good question. I tend to call it seasonal depression. And I'll say, with the mental health stigma, I think a lot of people, both men and women, of course, for different reasons, I think there is a lot of shame and guilt over saying things like depression or talking about mental health. So a couple years ago, I actually started also including just depression instead of I found years ago that I was using the seasonal part to kind of be like, it's not that real. Like, it's not my fault because depression without the prefix of seasonal, in my mind and in my experience with my own stigma, around mental health was that, something was really wrong with me if it wasn't the winter's fault. Like, if I couldn't blame it on the seasons, then I can only blame it, air quotes, on myself. And so whenever I'm talking to someone in my community or someone that I know, I say it, I will literally say this verbatim. I have depression year round. It gets worse in the winter. And that's something I started saying about 2 years ago, more so to give the people listening maybe some permission to for that to be true for them as well. So I call it seasonal depression. And I also tend to say things like I just said, I have depression year round and it gets worse in the winter. Yeah.
Really interesting. And I think for a lot of people, yeah, we have, if we're not perfect, we have shame in today's world, which is so sad, right? And so, and if we're not perfect and we have shame, we also have excuses, like for instance, seasonal. So I totally get that, with, and why is that? But that's probably a question for another day. Or
I was going to say that's a whole separate conversation. That's a big one.
That could be a really big conversation that I think would be fun to tap into. Maybe not fun, but it might be something that needs to be tapped into at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, gosh, do you want to talk about this maybe almost most recent bout? I don't know if it is your most recent bout or not, but when you went through COVID and had some changes in your business?
Yes. So I love this segue. So I last winter, so like the end of 2021, very beginning of 2022, I was 1 year into one of the biggest professional transitions of my life. And so last winter, my depression was the worst that it has ever been in my adult life. And it was really scary for me. Depression for me, and I can't speak to how anyone else experiences depression. I want to be clear on that. So this is just my experience.
Yeah.
Depression is kind of this like dark cloud that follows you everywhere, and everything is just a little less exciting. Everything is more stressful. Everything is slower. It's harder. Like your negative thoughts are really loud. And this past bout of it was the worst it had ever been. I felt like the winter had just like swallowed me whole and stuffed me into a box and I couldn't find my way out of it. And the reason why I think that it was so bad was because of this professional transition. So at the very
There were
end,
layers, it sounds like.
oh yeah, tons of layers, so many layers. At the end of 2020, I had closed my brick and mortar gym down in response to COVID, as well as, the business logistical reasons, and just kind of looking at really how long the pandemic was going to go and how that was changing how I would need to run my business. I closed the in-person portion of my business down. I still had a virtual portion of my business. And what I didn't realize back then was how different my lifestyle was going to be without a brick and mortar location. And so the lifestyle, that the portions of my lifestyle that were different, I will say first and foremost, was there was far less of a social connection.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah.
Far less of a social connection. And that is something that I never considered while I had my gym open, because in my mind, the people that I was interacting with on a daily basis, for me, that was work. I was putting that into a work bucket. I never also considered I'm standing in front of another person. I'm physically touching their body. As fitness professionals, we're like poking other people and just
Yeah.
and you get it. You've been doing this for a long time. It on the one hand, and you and I have talked about this. I don't know if you remember. It's a lot of game face, right?
Yes.
So it's exhausting in one way. The in-person component is very draining. You've got to put your happy face on. You've got your game face. But what I didn't realize, and as they say, you don't know what you have till it's gone. It was also a social outlet for me. So when I closed my gym down, I lost whatever that was, 80, almost 90% of my in-person interactions. And I didn't think anything of it. But what came in that place was a lot of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, as a fitness professional as well, I'll tell you, I went from, and you know what it's like, you're loading barbells for people, you're walking around the gym, and I went to a desk job. I still do strength and conditioning. It's just virtually, right? So I'm sitting a lot more. I'm in front of a screen a lot more. I've never spent more time in front of a screen in my life. And that alone contributed, I believe, to just how dark the depression was this past year. As well as just the whole mental aspect of settling into a new routine after a really big transition. So while I am fully bracing for impact for another winter of kind of, again, that depressive part, I'm not anticipating this winter to be as bad as last winter, because I have some kind of, and we can talk about some of the things I have in place. But those were really the biggest contributions to the severity of the depression. Every winter, I think many people feel this way. Even if you're not calling it seasonal depression, I think some people call it the winter blues.
Mm-hmm.
You're more tired, less energy. You just feel like you're kind of in a funk. And that's usually how it is, I think, for me. It's not always this massive engulfment, but yeah, I mean, yes, the winter comes and it's like, ugh, you don't want to go outside.
So you do see it cyclically.
Yes.
Yeah, except for then the big year was the year of the closing, the year of changing.
Yeah. Yep. So in terms of cyclically, it's, right around the time change, I'm a little less motivated to get my workouts in. I'm really less excited to go out, and really I just want to hide. I think the cold and all of that, but that's that seasonal affective disorder part of it, where it's really not me. It almost feels like there's a mask that's running the show. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, it
But
is.
it does it feels like you're not in control of your emotions.
Right. The real me almost feels like it's hiding, and then it's the depression and the sadness is running the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really exhausting, because you're I know I'm in here And
Yeah.
so something that I tell myself every year is like, just wait until spring. And that kind of keeps me going as well. Like, wait until spring. Um, and we can talk about all the other strategies that I have in place that help me as well. We can talk about that whenever
Yeah, I
you're
would
ready.
love to talk about strategies because one of the things I talked about earlier was delaying a big decision. But so I'm going to ask you a question. When you closed down your gym, was that around the time of your onset or was that before? I'm just trying to think about the timing and how you think that
I so
affected.
Yeah, so I had made the decision to close the gym down in July. So
Mhm.
not um anywhere really even remotely close to when, the time change and stuff, when that usually starts to slow me down a little bit.
Mhm.
Um but because of my lease agreement and the landlord from the space that I was renting, we couldn't close it until November. So I
Oh.
will say that at the beginning, so like I closed my gym and now we're around this time 2 years ago. So like the Thanksgiving mark. Um, it actually initially felt like a big relief. So it took me, I don't know if I explained this right. It took me almost all of 2021 to get to how bad it was. So there was a whole buffer year, I think, for me to actually even recognize the
So
grief of the
experiencing the
transition.
social isolation and experiencing the
Yes.
different lifestyle.
Yeah, it wasn't right away. Right away, closing my gym
Mm.
felt like a relief. Less stress, less decision making. I was losing less money that way. So that, was a relief as well.
Mhm.
I was excited at first to head into a new transition in my life. But yeah, it was that kind of that 2021, after 2020 and before 2022, it like took about that long again for me to start to experience too much screen time, not enough social time. It took about a year for it to really
Having a
affect me.
stagnation or a sitting down job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I really, Judy, I will say that what I learned this past winter is that people working desk jobs, I almost feel like really inspired to help more people that are working desk jobs. Most people do.
Yeah.
It's got to be taking such a toll on people's health. I mean, even like depression aside,
Hmm.
it must be taking a toll on people because again, just the screens and the artificial overhead light and the stimulation, and it's a lot. I mean, our human brains just weren't designed to work like this. I
Yeah.
really
And
believe
just
that.
that lack of 3D connection, real face-to-face connection. Yeah. That's just,
Yeah.
I'm going
So
through my mind and thinking about all the people that I know that still work in front of a screen,
yeah.
but didn't before, and
Yes.
noticing changes, that they've talked about. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the strategies that you've gone through this transition year. You've really started to feel the true effects of
Mm-hmm.
depression and seasonal depression. So what kind of strategies have you found helpful? And maybe some that weren't. I don't know.
Yeah. So I've got a lot, and I'm going to say these out of order. These are not in a hierarchy of importance. I'm just going to kind of go through my day. I will say one of the best things. I used to be a really, really big coffee drinker. I love coffee. It's not even just, I actually love the taste of it. I feel like it's just like it's an art form. I love coffee. And I will say one of the biggest helpful strategies that I had was only drinking 1 cup of coffee a day. So the depression sets in and I start to feel really tired. So I'm noticing, last winter, I'm drinking 2 cups of coffee a day, 3 cups of coffee a day because I'm so
Oh.
tired. I'm depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm in my 30s now. So if I'm drinking my fourth cup of coffee at 4 p.m., I
Oh
am
boy.
screwed for bedtime. So then what is that doing? It's disrupting my sleep. And what do we know about mental health, especially depression and things like anxiety as well? Especially for myself, I'll notice sleep disruptions, have a hard time falling asleep, a hard time staying asleep, and the coffee just wasn't helping. So that I think is probably just like the easiest strategy for many people. Like just we've got to slowly limit our caffeine intake. So I drink 1 cup of coffee a day. That was a huge help.
Hmm.
I know that sounds really benign, but that was a huge help.
No, think
Um,
about it, from 4 cups to one,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And I
that's huge.
notice a huge difference just in my energy. Like I don't feel so ramped up or buzzy. It's nice. I've noticed a big difference just in like how my nervous system responds to things.
Hmm.
So that was a big help. Um, I take I make it a point to get up and move around either outside or even just in the house, like do a load of laundry or something to break up my
Hmm.
screen time. So I think in my mind, when you're running business too, like I sit down in front of my computer and finish my to-do list. Well,
Hmm.
you're a business owner, you get it. The to-do list never ends.
Never.
It never ends. So I'm sitting in front of my computer for these long stretches at a time, and that wasn't working for me. So I'll work, a couple hours, 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours, but 4 hours is about my maximum before I need to get up, get moving. Whether that's a workout or a walk outside, that's certainly part of it. And we'll get to the movement piece of it, but even just getting out of work mode for a second and getting into what I call house mode. So again, do a load of laundry, do shovel the driveway if that needs to be done, run some
Hmm.
errands, just get away from the screen.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the way that I say this is I have to get away from the screen and get back into my real life.
Oh, I like
Like I
that
need to
that thought. Yeah.
yeah, I need to get into my real life. That has been a huge dial mover for me. Again, I really think it's the sitting and it's the screen time. It's, there's so much stimulation on the screen.
Hmm.
And with that being said, also, I have a lot of timers set up on my phone. So my phone will kick me off of certain apps, Instagram, especially social media is a big one. I have a 2 hour daily time limit now. So my phone
Wait,
will
so
lock.
does the phone not let you, if you go to check it, it'll be like, nope, you used up your time. You can't sign on.
Yes.
I need that app.
There's several different apps. There's different apps. Some are free, some are paid. And then the iPhone actually has a setting built into it that it'll tell you screen limit. It's pretty cool. So I've done that 2 hours, um, 2 hours a day. And for some people, I think that, I mean, that's a lot of time to be spending on social media, but
Hmm.
you and we're creating the content. So I'm wasting a lot of time like typing the caption and, posting on stories. It takes a lot of time, but
Hmm.
having those boundaries with the technology has been, I've noticed just such a clear, more, I shouldn't say super clear brain, but a much more clear headspace than usual. That's probably the caffeine is definitely one arm of that. And then, but less screen time with that has been also super helpful.
That is
Um,
really interesting. I did not even expect you to say that. And I got to just ask you, does your dog help you with that?
oh my gosh. Well, for those, is anyone going to watch the video, Judy, or no? They'll just
I
get the
may put
audio.
a little bit up. I may put a little snippet up of us online just because this is just kind of funny. Folks, you're going to have to see this.
Yes. So Judy and I, for those of you that can't see us, Judy and I are both sitting in front of a bed, a bed. And how many dogs are on your bed, Judy? You got 3 back there?
I've got 3 big dogs behind
Oh,
me.
I'm so jealous. I wish I had 3. And then my guy is back here too. Um, I'm like a crazy dog lady. Like this guy is the love of my life. And he's been a huge help. I mean, I think dogs in general are, right? Like
Yeah.
they're just so happy and that I think is always nice to be in the presence of. And again, like something else that he helps me with is he's got to get out and go for a walk, right? And
Yeah.
he has to do that even in the winter too. So kind of almost, I kind of see him as like a buddy. And so if someone's listening and you don't have a dog, I think the idea of a buddy, a walking buddy, anyone else for again, to kind of combat that loneliness that I think we all feel a little bit more in the winter too,
Yeah.
is so helpful. So he's not necessarily gonna remind me to take him. He's super lazy. So Mac is super lazy and he'll never remind me to take him for a walk. But when I look at him and I'm like, oh, we haven't been outside in a day or two because it's been, super cold or really snowy, getting outside and walking with Mac is such an easy stress relief for us, for me, I should say, probably for him too. And yeah, also just, yeah, having a dog around the house. I'm sure you feel the same way, Judy. It's just like, dogs are the best.
They're unbelievable. So, like, I really didn't have a dog until 6 years ago. I mean, so
Oh,
we're kind of, I still consider myself new at doing dogs. I ask all the
yeah.
real dog owners, like, is this normal? What do you do? But I just cracks me up that they follow me around all day, unless
Everywhere.
my husband's home because he's the king of the dogs because he gives them way more treats than I do. But, all day long, it's me and the dogs. And I kind of probably did this to them. They're used to going outside like every 2 hours. So
Okay.
we have to go outside and throw a stick, and I'll set a timer like, all right, we're not coming in for 20 minutes. Sometimes I'm like, all right, this one has to be quick. But if we don't get to a walk, because now I can't walk 3, but even
Right.
just throwing this stick, they are so happy. And that happiness just kind of like, it's contagious.
It really is. That's such a good way to put it. Their happiness is so contagious.
Yeah.
It's even if you're not the one, like, because that's the other part too. Like exercise is a really big mental health anchor for me. But even
Mm-hmm.
watching him have a good time, even if I'm not necessarily exercising, is it, you're right. I mean, it's their joy is so contagious. So
Yeah.
yes, he is a big part of my joy for sure. Yeah. Um, I will say, kind of bringing back the exercise
Mm-hmm.
component to it. Exercises, like I just mentioned, exercise is a huge mental health anchor for me. And I want to kind of touch on this a little bit because the irony is that exercise actually used to be part of a disorder for me. It used to be a compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done to move away from that kind of unhealthy relationship with exercise and have this really concrete, really amazing relationship with moving my body because I will say, it is the number one way exercise of all the strategies I've mentioned so far. Regular intentional exercise is the number one way that I can keep my mental health in check. It doesn't take away my seasonal depression. It doesn't take away my depression. It
Mm-hmm.
actually, I see a therapist. I'm really open about my journey in therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
love therapy. Exercise doesn't, um,
So it doesn't eliminate the need.
it doesn't, thank you. It does not
Yeah.
eliminate the need for therapy, but I cannot explain it. You probably get it. I think most people get it. We all experience those endorphins, the
Yeah.
it just feels so good to move your body. And again, that is the number one thing that keeps my mental health in check is exercise.
So, but for you, it's kind of like finding your spot on the spectrum between, and because I just would like to
Mm-hmm.
say right here that I completely am also recovering from really compulsive exercise disorder and
Mm-hmm.
also an eating disorder, and I will say that and again, I like to say disordered eating because eating disorder kind of makes me feel creepy, but I'm going to be very
Yeah.
honest, but this whole exercise thing is like, and I'm holding my hands up for people who can't see, because I tend to think of things in a spectrum
Yes.
versus, so on the one end is the obsessive exercise. Like if I don't get my hit of endorphins, 7 days a week, then I'm a failure. And on the other hand is got to exercise a little bit in order to get there. And
Mm-hmm.
like somewhere in the middle is a really nice mix that
Yeah.
I think it's always that thing where if a little is good, more is better.
Yep. That is exactly like what my disorder sounded like. If a
Yeah.
little bit is good, more is better. You're exactly right. And
Mm-hmm.
got stuck in that loop for a really long time. The way that I love this question, Judy, and I'm with you. I see things on a spectrum as well. And you're exactly right. It is kind of a juggling act sometimes between, am I going too far this way or too far this way? For me, what helps to keep my pulse on that is how rigid I am with my expectations. So in the past, it was, pick your poison. It was a number of things in the past. But for example, one of my kind of exercise compulsions was, exercise for whatever it was, let's just say 75 minutes, right? Well, these days, the healthier version of me, I may actually only want to go for a 30-minute walk. I may only have the time to go for a 30-minute walk. And so instead of it being like this militant and rigid, do this or else, or do this or you are a failure, I have such a wide range now of different ways that I can move my body that all make me feel good. So a leisure walk, lifting weights. I mean, it can be anything. And versus in the past, it was a very militant and rigid schedule with no margin for error, zero margin for error.
I am not. I'm sorry. I don't know why my phone keeps calling.
That's okay.
Yeah. That was my husband. I gave him the sorry, I can't talk right now message. I am just so nodding my head with it, going through a couple of years, it was minutes. Like, how many minutes of cardio did I do this week? A couple of years later, it was like, well, how much volume did I lift? I used to actually calculate the volume of pounds lifted per workout, right? You did it too, right? Okay. I mean, I'm not proud of that.
But I thought it was the only person who did that.
No.
Oh my gosh. This is the first time anyone's ever, yes, I used to do that too. I used to do that too.
Yeah. And it's very funny because yesterday I was listening to a podcast and Adam Grant, Rethinking by Adam Grant. And he had someone on and this was kind of a side. It wasn't the whole point of the podcast, but what he talked about, the guest talked about, the more you think you know the plan for your life, the wronger you are. Like, nobody knows. If you think you have your life planned, you're dead wrong. And I'm just thinking, like, this is such a great example of that, and how a lot of, and I can't say if that's causing our depression, but maybe if we're already prone to it and we're prone to other disorders, if we think we can control everything, we can't. And it's not helping.
So that is something that I have been working on for a number of different reasons. And I wouldn't say that it's like directly causing my depression. It's just kind of part of the whole conversation, is really working on accepting instead of controlling. So on the days that I really thought, that I was going to go lift some weights today, accepting the fact that I can't today, instead of controlling it and then making myself follow the plan, accepting what's true. Like, accepting the fact that maybe, and again, outside of the depression conversation, accepting the fact that we woke up and don't feel well, accepting the fact that we were up all night for whatever reason. And so, maybe it's not smart to go crush it at the gym, and accepting that, that acceptance piece instead of the control piece, which when it comes to disorder, I mean, I can be a control freak. That's where that kind of comes from. Does the control piece, it sounds like it resonates for you too then?
Very much so. I mean, I literally start every day with a serenity prayer. And today, if I can share, was one of those days. I woke up and my phone crashed. Like, I had the little Apple logo or a black screen, and periodically it would go bad. Nothing I did could make it work. And I'm like, and I'm leaving town later today. I need to have this phone in working order. So I used up all my exercise time and then some at the Apple store. And I'm like, I'm not going to get, that fourth day of weightlifting in this week. It's just not going to happen. In old me, it would have had to be 6 days. I would have already been a failure by now, but I'm like, no, this is fine. And I'm like, you know what? I literally had to write in my journal today, Judy, you're not going to lose muscle because you didn't work out today. It's going to be fine.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. And that's that acceptance. So yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. And again, going back to the depression conversation, I many years ago needed to just because similar to like what we're saying, even with the exercise piece, I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like, why aren't I, why can't I be whoever I am in the summer in the winter time? There's something wrong with me. And
Mm,
then I had to accept, like, okay, Christina, but your brain just doesn't work like that. And instead of trying to control it, because what I was doing many years ago was trying to make myself be the exact same version of myself year round.
mhm.
And that control in the winter, that control at all period is only going to work for so long before it doesn't work anymore. And to be honest, I will say that that was what last year was as well. I lost the ability to control it all.
Mhm.
My
And
gym,
really, if you think about it, do you really think you were in control, or do you think you were fooling yourself with the illusion of control?
great question. So I was running away from myself with work. So that
Mm,
was a distraction. I was distracted and um very much so like addicted to the busyness of work. And what pairs really nicely with that is also the distraction of the obsession with exercise, right? Like that just all kind of goes together.
yeah.
And when I lost my gym, something that I've said is that I lost my pacifier. I closed my gym down and I lost the thing that helped me run away. And
Hmm.
now I was like, well, crap, like it's just me and me now. So,
Hmm.
as scary as this last bout of seasonal depression was for me, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about me as a person, me as a human, and what makes me feel best, what doesn't make me feel best. And that's those strategies that we were talking about: less coffee, being really intentional about my social interactions with people. Um, I think that's another thing that sometimes humans do. Like we say yes to everything we're invited to, which I think is like a different conversation.
Yeah.
But in the winter, I will tell you, I just don't have the capacity to be like social event, social event, social event. There is a part of me that just likes to stay home and snuggle with my dog in my robe and be cozy.
Hmm.
Um, so being very intentional about the things that I do say yes to is also really helpful because then I'm excited, right? There's something on my
Yeah.
calendar that I'm excited instead of like
Instead of having to
regretting that I
check it
said
off.
yes.
And
Yeah,
can I ask you a question?
sure.
So when we first hopped on, you made a comment that just reminded me of this. You said you had a very good weekend recently and you were a guest speaker at something, but you were home. Did you use the word recovering?
I think I said recharging, but maybe I said,
Recharging.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
something that I think we don't give enough credit to, but I'm that kind of person as well. Like when I was raising my kids, they were all in travel sports, four of them at once.
Mm,
So our weekends were literally just from sport to sport to sport to sport to sport. And other than that, I was a stay-at-home mom, but literally my part-time job was always managing
yeah.
either a hockey team or a swim team or something. I would like send everyone off to school on Monday morning. My husband would be at work and I'd be like, okay, I can breathe. There's
Yep.
nobody here. It's quiet. I would need those Mondays. Like, and
Yes.
Monday became my favorite day of the week, but I never
Yep.
wanted anyone to know that.
Your little secret. Yeah. I love that. You know, as business owners, just people in general, I think we're told a lot about time management, right? So we're
Mhm.
like, look at the planner and we have this many hours in a day. And I don't get me wrong, I love time management stuff. I love planners and calendars and all that stuff. I love it all. And also, to your point, what I think is missing from a lot of those conversations isn't just the time, but the energy.
Yeah.
So I might go to something that's only, let's say, 3 hours of my day. That's not the whole day, right? But it may have been very energetically expensive for me,
Mm,
very energetically taxing. And the more that I've allowed myself to even be open to like, wow. Cause I think in the past I would have been like, what's wrong with you? That was only a 3 hour event. Why are you tired? Judging myself, criticizing myself. Now I'm like,
Three
well,
hours of
yeah,
game face, though, right?
yes, you got it. It's the game. 3 hours of game face in my mind is like 9 hours. It's like multiplied. Right?
Yes.
It's multiplied. So that's another thing really that last winter taught me was that I have to be very mindful. I am choosing to be very mindful of my energy. So, I don't think you're going to air that first part, but that's what we started talking about where
Yeah.
I was traveling. It was a very social heavy weekend.
Hmm.
And so even months ago, before I even went on this trip, as soon as it was booked, I blocked off this entire week. No client calls, very little administrative tasks. And of course, we booked this in because this is something fun and light and easy for me.
Good.
Um,
Well,
but
thank
yeah,
you for
of
giving us
course.
some time.
Oh my God. And again, it's not even about the time. It's just like, do I really want to go from a game face heavy weekend into a game face heavy week? And that just wouldn't make me feel best. So it's exactly like your Monday example.
Mhm.
And I love that you did that. That's great.
Yeah. I would admit it to other moms, but I never admitted it to my husband, but
You
I would
can't,
now.
you
Yeah.
blow your secret.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, this has been so helpful. Is there any other strategies that you didn't bring up that you may want to share?
I mean, there's just a couple other things too. Exposing, so like especially if you are someone who feels sad or blue in the winter, exposing yourself to natural sunlight, even if it's from inside of the window. So I will try to like right now I'm facing a window, it's overcast though, but trying to get natural sunlight into our eyeballs is a big one. The
Mhm.
earlier in the day you can do that, the better. You can Google, there's a lot of circadian rhythm stuff that's out there. That's a big one.
Mhm.
I always get my vitamin D levels checked in the winter by my primary care physician. So if that's another one too, if you need to supplement with vitamin D.
Mhm.
Um, and I, yeah, another big one for me too is making sure that I'm eating well. That's a big one
Yeah.
too. Like my energy is already lower, so making sure that I'm not making it worse by trying to eat less is a big one too.
Yeah. Another recovering, right, attitude.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. But
Yeah.
really, those are the biggest strategies for
Those are
me.
so helpful. Some of them I didn't expect, especially the boundaries around technology,
Mm.
and the recharging, Um, I expected you to say exercise and eat well and move more. I love
Mm-hmm.
the coffee and that, the coffee thought, which makes so much sense.
Yeah,
you know, Gosh, thank you so much.
you're
And
welcome.
I look forward to seeing you, but not much of it. I know because we're both cutting down on social media, but on social media, folks, if you
Yes,
don't follow Christina on Instagram, follow her, but just know you may just have to click on her because you don't post all the time,
I
right?
don't post all the time, no.
But when she does post, when you do post, like I always gain something from it. I do enjoy, and I'm not just saying that, but I just enjoy, like, the whole reason I contacted you for this chat today was because you were very forward about the fact that this is something that you struggle with in your life and that you're dealing with it.
Thank you, Judy. I felt so honored that you reached out about this topic and that you're inviting your community in to listen to something like this. I think the subject is very important, and I feel honored to be the one delivering just my story with this. So always a pleasure. And I love that we're still connected in this way. It's always such a joy talking to you.
It is. It really is. And thank you so much. Wow, I am just so grateful that Christina was really willing to come on and be so honest. So I don't know for maybe younger people listening, but I feel like for myself and maybe or maybe not, people of the generation of midlifers, maybe you don't feel a stigma about being so honest about these things. But for me, it feels kind of hard to admit these things. So I'm really grateful for Christina and her honesty and her frankness, sharing her experience with us. And if you would like to follow Christina on Instagram, you can find her at Christina Montalvo, I believe, and I will double check that for you. But either way, it will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, and remember, we will be back next week with a new episode here on the Air Hug Community Podcast.